The first sin of today is leaving out the zapping system in the Resident Evil 2 remake. In the original Resident Evil 2, the actions in your A scenario will carry to your B scenario run. Here in the A one, you get the option to take either the SMG, side pack, both or neither. Then later in the B scenario, you will only have the items available you left behind previously. So if you're more confident in your A run, you might want to leave them there to make a subsequent playthrough easier, or vice versa. The game gives you plenty of these choices, which makes for a much more interesting and strategic gameplay loop, because you always have to ask yourself if you want to prioritize your current or following run. Unfortunately, this whole system was removed in the remake, making the whole game a lot less strategic and not delivering as a remake in this regard at all. But apart from that, they botched most of the connections between the two runs anyway and made them very similar, so that whole aspect of the remake is very sinful. The second sin is the incredibly stupid role of Chris Redfield in Resident Evil Village. Don't get me wrong, I liked the game and enjoyed the story back when playing it for the first time, but Jesus, it's ridiculous if you think about it for a second. And not even the fun Resident Evil kind of ridiculous, but only in the who the f thought of that kind of ridiculous. The entire game could have been avoided if Chris just told Ethan what was going on. Instead, he literally does this whole weird villain thing in the beginning, pretty much with the only purpose of being shocking for the trailers, and then tells Ethan to stop fighting midway through the game after he already killed 2 lords, which is 2 more than Chris and his team managed to so far. And we are somehow supposed to be fine with this, because Chris does another 180 at the end and is suddenly on our side? Even his team acknowledges that this might have been the wrong approach. So all good, eh? No! In my opinion, they seriously messed up this part of the story, and it would have been much more enjoyable if properly thought out. Third on the list is the early killing of Wesker in Resident Evil 5. To be fair, it was better than Umbrella's end in Resident Evil 4 previously, but arguably still too early. Wesker was an incredibly iconic, well-established villain of the series, and I would argue that his absence of the series is clearly noticeable. Since his death, we barely got any remarkable villains, apart from maybe the Bakers from Resident Evil 7. And the void they created when killing him is in no way filled. No villain lasts longer than a single game, has proper plot relevance for the whole series, or is actually interesting. Everyone is at best serviceable for the game, but never more than that. Take the end boss from Resident Evil Revelations, Jack Norman for example. I can't even remember him. I'm serious. But that's not even where it stops, because it's even a problem in the mainline games. Resident Evil Village's Mother Miranda is just incredibly unremarkable and boring in comparison to Wesker. I think killing off Wesker sooner or later would have been a good choice, maybe even together with Chris, but it definitely did the series no good how they did it in the end. The fourth sin is the handling of voice actors. Chris was voiced by 7 different actors so far, Jill by 6, Leon by 5, and even Claire by 3. And that's only for the English cast and excludes the non-Resident Evil games like Marvel vs. Capcom. But at the same time, voice actors are also recasted for different characters. For example, Carlos in the Resident Evil 3 remake and Chris in Village are both voiced by Jeff Sheene, while both Nikolai and Heisenberg are voiced by Neil Newborn. Although the majority of the cast does a great job in my opinion, it's pretty jarring to hear the same voices for completely different characters, while also having fan favorites replaced every 3 games. This is especially sinful if we consider how Capcom has easily the resources to avoid this. The fifth sin is that you aren't subscribed to the channel yet. Wait, I'm getting a déjà vu. Anyway, apparently, according to YouTube, a lot of you haven't subscribed yet, so feel free to do so if you're enjoying this video. Thank you. The real fifth sin is the weird choice and ending system in Resident Evil 7. After you fight Jack for the 3rd time and lose one of the 2 serum samples you need in order to cure Mia and Zoe, you have to choose to whom you give the remaining one. Do you save Mia, your wife, the reason you came here, or Zoe, the one who helped you survive this whole mess? Well, f you if you go for Zoe, because if you do, she literally dies 2 minutes later and then both are dead. But if you decide to cure Mia, then Zoe just gets rescued after the game and everyone is happy. I like the inclusion of this choice and I think it would have been very interesting if done better, but the way it's done, it's just complete nonsense to show Zoe. The story gives you a big f you and the rest of the game is completely identical, considering you literally play as Mia for the last section anyway, who you technically just left behind. At least there's an achievement. The sixth sin is the shameful implementation of microtransactions for unlockables. During the early years of the franchise, you could beat the game in certain conditions to unlock special weapons and costumes for following playthroughs. This made for a good reason to play the game several times, while also improving your skills and knowledge of the game. I mean, go through hell just to get a stupid outfit and an overpowered weapon I don't need anymore anyway? Count me in! Unfortunately for us customers, Capcom hates us and started selling these unlockables for real money as DLC. And I'm fine with this if you can still get these with in-game challenges, but especially the majority of outfits are only obtainable when paying extra money. Just look at the Resident Evil 4 remake and how almost every single costume has to be bought with real world money. It's not only sinful, but also just a really shitty thing to do. The seventh sin is the complete assassination of Nemesis in the Resident Evil 3 remake. In the original, he is scary, dangerous, randomized to a certain degree, seemingly ever present, and can surprise you in tight spaces. Additionally, the boss fights are great and you can see how he gets more and more mutated along the way. Nemesis in the remake is there for 30 minutes, is completely scripted and chases you around set paths while being easily stopped by at most 2 grenades, then mutates in the ugly dog form and stays that way for pretty much the whole game. Almost all of the original encounters are gone, there's literally no tension at all, and it's not even rewarding to kill them. Ah yeah, and did I mention how his whole set of animations are copy-pasted from the Resident Evil 2 remake? Or how the choices that often accompanied his entrance in the original were cut? Or how they just copy-pasted the exact same boss fight twice? The Resident Evil 3 remake is far from being great anyway, but damn did they butcher Nemesis, even compared to the rest of the game. The 8th sin are the gimmick sections of Resident Evil Village. Often the game seems to be more like a Resident Evil theme park with the goal to include as many different types of horror and Resident Evil-like elements you somehow could without any commitment or proper vision to make them a full game. Hey, we want a chase enemy like in the Resident Evil 2 remake. There you go. Hey, we want creepy psychological horror in the game. There you go. Hey, we want a merchant, just like in Resident Evil 4. There you go. And this seems to be how almost every single section of this game was created. You have the village as a hub world and then several completely disconnected, half-baked areas with completely different fields. The game's predecessor, Resident Evil 7, did something similar, with every part of the family representing a different kind of horror, but it felt much more coherent and logical. Overall, I don't want to give off the impression that I hate the game, but I wish they just committed to a more focused direction. Especially because some sections, like the "oh so scary baby", are completely boring after the first playthrough anyway. The 9th sin is the absence of Jill Valentine in the recent story. Other characters like Claire or Barry weren't particularly prominent either, but played a big role in Revelations 2 at least. Jill's last appearance, in contrast, was 16 years ago in Resident Evil 5, and that was literally not even a big role for the majority of the game. I mean, to be fair, she was in Revelations 1, which is set in the early 2000s, so it doesn't show us any development, and Dead Island, a movie most fans have probably not even watched. Capcom just loves to milk Leon and especially Chris for literally everything, no matter if it's movies, games or promotions, while disregarding their first and most iconic female character. Just look at how Chris appeared for the last 4 mainline games in a row, while we haven't seen Jill in a new story forever. It's absolutely sinful what Capcom is doing with her. The last sin are the horrible bosses and enemies in Resident Evil 0. I have seriously no idea how you can make a game with tank controls and fixed camera angles while having so much experience as Capcom had back then with so many fast and annoying enemies. The f***ing monkeys that are small fast things, the f***ing frogs that can just one-shot kill you at several points in the game, and the f***ing bat that flies outside of the view while spawning a bunch of additional f***ers who get targeted by the stupid auto-aim. I don't understand what was going on at Capcom to move from the previous well-balanced enemies to this hell. Literally the only enemies I can complain about are the zombies and dogs, both of which remained identical from the previous games. Hell, even Code Veronica was less annoying in regards to the enemies, and trust me, that is usually not a high bar to clear. So what do you think of these sins? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please comment down below. I would also like to thank you guys for providing so many additional ideas in the last part. I wrote down everything and did and will try to incorporate as many of them as possible, so feel free to share sins I haven't mentioned yet in the comments. Additionally, please subscribe, like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Thank you and see you next time.